Hey everybody, Alis here. Today I am logged into Lord of the Rings Online for a Coursera course video. In this video, I will be comparing and contrasting the differences with the book, the game, and the movie when it comes to the approach on Weathertop and the actions that are involved there. I'm starting out at the Hobbits camp where they would, in the book, actually engage with the ring wraiths. Unlike the movie, where they would run to the top of the summit and fight there. The actions in the book are very short, comparatively speaking, because all Tolkien does is show us what the ring wraiths look like in their natural form, and then have Frodo slip off the ring just as Strider arrives. In the movie, that makes for poor action, so instead we have them fighting up top of the summit with Strider showing up, saving the day, kicking the butts of many ring wraiths, and fleeing to the fords with Frodo. Now in the game, we actually end up approaching the summit twice. Once to gather a clue as to a strange occurrence for a local ranger, which we find out would have been Gandalf's encounter with the ring wraith himself, which he speaks about later in the book. The second time, a band of orcs will have taken the summit, and it's up to us, rather, to to clear the mountain of their menace. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my path up top before we actually encounter the orcs up there. One of the nice things is that Turbine did include the Crebain that are actually found around, which Strider mentions in the book that not all birds are to be trusted. Good luck trying to, if you've seen the movie, I find that it's very difficult now to read the book without reading Strider's parts with Viggo Mortensen's voice. Now, my path is not following the pathways that are included in the book. I'm a little over-leveled for this section, so there really isn't anything for me to fight on the way up, but that's more like the book where there really wasn't much to fight at all. Pretty much through the first book, most of the fighting is in Moria and beyond. So we've come to the summit, which the first time around is fairly easy. Here we would find the Gandalf's rune, which, let me see if I can zoom in on that. The G rune here, with the 3 after it. Now, after the break, we will actually be entering the instance in which you approach the summit fighting a bunch of orcs. Hey everybody, here we are at the foot of Weathertop, ready to retake it from the orcs that have chosen to defile it, or something along those lines. Now, this will surely really show the difference between the way a game has to function, and the book would have to function, and a movie has to function. In the book, while there's areas that Tolkien tends to drone on about, sorry, it's just the way I feel about it, action oftentimes isn't one of them. As I said, it was a very quick, the riders show up, Frodo slips on the ring, sees the riders for what they are, strikes out at them, and the last thing you see before the fight is over is Strider coming in wielding a pair of flaming brands. That's it. There is no massive battle with descriptions and everything. It's as simple as Strider shows up and the fight's over. You don't see the fight, because it's not important to what the fight was like, isn't important to the flow of the book as what Frodo sees putting the ring on. In the movie, you have to have action. Otherwise, people wonder, well, Strider showed up, and now suddenly they're on their way to fleeing to Rivendell. You have to have show the action in the movie to have that transition. In the game, one, we don't actually face any ring wraiths at Weathertop. Spoiler alert. Although later well, I won't spoil that any further. Instead, being a game, you have to have a different way of engaging the player. So, we ourselves make our way up to Weathertop. By the way, I'm over level for this, so I'm just going to leave Candaeth in the dust while I come up here and obliterate a bunch of goblins. Normally this instance is much more difficult, but it's a level 20 instance. I'm level 46. But here, being a game, it has to engage and be entertaining as a game and not just as a means of telling a story. For us, this is our being Strider. And of course, I'm going to breeze through this because, well, this is probably about the 10th, 15th time I've done this instance. So, not all on this character. So, while we wait for Candaeth to catch up to us, well, we'll wait for Candaeth to catch up to us. Now, no, we don't have the surprise of a ring wraith waiting up top for us, but we will have our own surprises in and of themselves. Sorry, I'm also paying to the course chat. Now, of course, we also get various interludes where we can stop, rest, and speak to the NPC to continue. We get that luxury because it is a game. We have resources that have to replenish. Morale, power, wait for cooldowns to reset. Especially now that our ally is leaving us behind to go off his own path up, which we cannot follow. I've tried. And now the challenge gets a little bit harder because we don't have an ally. Nominally. Originally, this instance was intended for a full fellowship, but after the free-to-play release happened, they did tone it down and allow for solo action on it because they didn't want the inability to gather a group to prevent people from going through the epic story, which is our story as players, where we aren't following the ring to Mordor. That's not our job. Instead, we get our own story, which so far takes place over 3 books. The first one, containing everything that happens in Eriador, while the Fellowship is off on its... distracted. While the Fellowship is off on its own task. The second book takes us into Moria, and the third is leading us back to the Fellowship and takes us into Rohan. So, I'll say a bit more once I finish up at the summit, but we'll just quickly get through the rest of this. And Gandalf's thrown Pinecone. The Lore Master, the class that I'm playing, was very heavily influenced by Gandalf, with the idea that while everything I do looks like magic, it's really all based on science and alchemy. Okay, I have no idea how that one is science. But I do know that Burning Embers is Gandalf's magic pine cones that he chucks out in The Hobbit. Sorry, I'm going back and forth checking the class chat as well. So while we took the long route to make our way up to Candaeth, he took a shortcut. But just a handful of orcs bests him. Meanwhile, we rolled through an entire army. Like I said, a lot easier when you're on level. Or a lot harder when you're on level. Now for the surprise at the top of Weathertop. Be prepared for anything. Now the first thing you may notice is our morale shot up rapidly. That's because, again, this entire instance was originally intended as a group instance. So, this is what we get to fight at the top of Weathertop. A bunch of orcs. Oh, yeah. And they brought themselves a troll. Which will be really no match for us. Thus the orcs were vanquished. So, again, we come back and we look. At the summit of Weathertop, we had to fight our way up through orcs, only to run into an Uruk-hai and a troll. Meanwhile, in the book, they come up to the summit, find Gandalf's rune, return to their campsite, and there they encounter the Ringwraiths. And the action is only brief, just enough to give you an idea that something happened, but not to slow the narration down and ignore the story entirely. And then in the movie, what we have is action used as a transition from Frodo removing the ring to what would be in the book the next chapter. And in the game, well, the action is what makes it a game. So, this is Alis. Have a great day.